So, welcome to the show. Today will be a good one. It's been a while since I've made one of these videos regarding the 1208.5 carriage house. We ran into some untimely delays as a result of some administrative problems with the building department. So I feel compelled to chime in and share with you why I am 20 days behind schedule as a result of a COVID-19 administrative error. So I have a carriage house that I've been working on. Many of you have been following it. It is called the Old Colorado City Carriage House. We were on like a rocket ship trajectory to getting this thing done in like 37 something, maybe 40 days, inside of 40 days, until we ran into a permit wrench that was like an unfortunate administrative error with the building permit. So I had an electrical permit pulled for new service and new wire. I had a plumbing sewer tap permit pulled. I had a new water service tap pulled. I had a mechanical permit pulled for a mini split system. I had a siding permit. I had a roofing permit. I had a window permit. And then when I submitted for a construction permit to have an inspector come in and inspect some sheeting and collar ties and whatnot, the project went into administrative review because of COVID-19. All construction permits have to be reviewed. And when it gets put into the review queue, it goes into zoning review, and then it goes into enumeration review. Enumeration is addressing. So zoning cleared, they're like, yeah, it's inside of the building envelope, it meets building height and setback requirements. No, it's an old building, it's been there for over 100 years, you're good. And then it went to enumerations, and the enumerations counter, they were like, timeout. We don't do half number enumerations or property addressing in Colorado City proper anymore. Your address can no longer be 1208.5 West Colorado Avenue. Your new address is going to be 1208B. So you must go back through the queue and reapply for a construction permit and use the address 1208B. I'm like, okay, that's freaking easy. Enter in 1208B, put my documents into the queue and submit, and then the construction official flags. And he's like, hey, just wanted to let you know I don't have any records on file that show that a 1208B address exists. And I'm like, what do you mean? I was just told by enumerations that the old address was 1208.5. And he's like, I know, but in the queue administratively it's 1208B. I can't give you construction permits until you have the dwelling certified by a licensed professional engineer. He needs to provide an administrative review letter and a statement and an affidavit stating that he has observed the property, that its condition is suitable for habitability and occupancy, and that the foundation is frost protected. I'm like, okay, well that's bullshit. So that should just be a simple review, right? I can just get the letter and do that. And he said no. Unfortunately, because of COVID-19, all construction permits are subject to administrative review for 10 days. You're not going to be allowed to administratively submit the engineer's response until after the 10-day expiration. You won't be able to make any changes within the permit review time frame until the review queue spits it out at the end. And I'm like, well, that's bull crap because you just delayed my job for 10 days. But that's beside the point. Tell me about this frost protection of the foundation. What am I supposed to do about that? And he's like, I don't know, be creative. Figure it out. You're going to have to find a way. There are a million people that do construction and work on rubble foundations in Colorado Springs. Be creative. Come up with something, Mr. Ferranti. You have a Class A Unlimited GC license. I'm sure you're smart enough between you and your engineers to come up with something. So that is what this discussion is about. And this is how I'm going to overcome, or this is how I overcame this obstacle. In a review, we're going to have a very quick and short discussion about shallow foundations. Okay, this is a slab on grade foundation. Typically this thickened edge right here is 12 inches. This edge right here will be 4 inches, maybe 5 inches, somewhere in there, right? That's the nominal thickness, right? You can also have a foundation stem wall, a short stem wall foundation and a footing that will have anything 36 inches, usually less than 36 inches, right? So if this overall length right here is 36 inches or less, this becomes a shallow foundation. The code says, the revised code that's been adopted by Pikes Peak Regional says, all shallow foundations that are 36 inches or below that have occupied space above them, these are walls, and this would be a floor that's stacked on top of this foundation wall. All shallow foundations, systems that are 36 inches or below, must be frost protected, and they must be damp-proofed or waterproofed from the outside. And you're like, well, how do you achieve that detail then? Well, normally what would happen is you would take isopoly foam and you would put polyfoam there, you would put polyfoam underneath this slab right here, and on this you would put foam here, rigid foam here, or you could go on the inside of the wall. Most inspectors don't care as long as it's one way or the other. Some of them require you to go to the front side of the footing, and that's fine. And then ultimately what would happen is you would be required to put a vapor barrier up here to keep vapor and slab on grade from driving underneath this and coming around the foundation and causing upheaval in the slab or lifting or expansion or contraction of the dirt below the slab. This right here will prevent any moisture. When you put established grade, it will prevent moisture from climbing underneath the foundation wall because it has to go deeper than 36 inches. Well, what happens when you have a rubble foundation? Rubble foundation. Well, what is that, a rubble foundation? Well, back in the day, foundations were made of rocks. Lots of rocks, big rocks, small rocks. Some of them were disproportionately big and small, right? And they had lots of gaps. And then at the bottom, there used to be like a piece of limestone, and it was never really like flatter shaped, so they'd put like wedges or shims or some kind of bull crap in there. And then guys would pack this with mortar, right? They would just stuff this with mortar and hope that it would like hold in place. So there was like mortar all over this thing to keep these rocks consolidated and keep it whatever. But it wasn't airtight, right? It wasn't airtight. There were holes and all that stuff in it. And then on top of this, they would just install a plate and just lay it on top of like a limestone rock that was up here that was usually flat. They didn't like bolt it in or plate it in. And then what they did is they just would put dirt, and they would just lay dirt up against this foundation. When I had a discussion with the building official, he made it pretty clear this foundation needs to be damp proofed and it needs to have ice and water shield. My problem is this this foundation right here is like 16 inches tall, top to bottom. Frost is all the way down here, another 20 inches. So how do we fix that, or how do we do that? How do we come up with a solution in construction? So what I came up with and what I figured out, and you'll have a wall that's stacked on this eventually, I said, all right, here's what I'm going to do to come up with a fix for this. I'm going to take ice and water shield, and I'm going to set a pin right here. I'm going to install foam wedges right here and right here to get rid of the step to put a cant in, and then I'm going to install ice and water shield right here on the front side of the foundation as damp proofing or waterproofing. This is water impervious and vapor impervious material, okay? The next thing that I'm going to do to fix this, or to work on this, is I'm going to install this rigid poly isofoam. I'm going to take this rigid poly isofoam right here. I'm going to put it there, and I'm going to put it there. Remember, I had grade that was in here, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dump all of this dirt out of grade, and I'm going to dig a trench, right? So what am I going to end up doing here with this? I'm now going to lay a piece of polyfoam in the bottom of this trench right here, right? Extending down the line of the foundation. Well, what does that do? What does that do? Well, now the sum of this distance and this distance, so long as they're 36 inches greater, as long as this X as long as X and X plus 1 is greater than 36 inches, we can accommodate, and that is our workaround for that. And what is the theory beyond that? Well, the theory beyond that is this. This effective range, this effective distance right here becomes a swing radius or a pendulum for a vapor drive. So what that means is vapor that comes into here has to travel around the foundation, down and around and into the foundation. So you effectively are pushing the vapor drive back, or any moisture that could potentially get to the foundation is blocked until out here. So you get moisture far enough out here, and then you get an overall developed distance here of 36 inches plus. So this becomes your effective drop distance, and it's greater than the frost depth requirement. So this is the workaround for that. So you fill your trench back up with dirt, you bury all this crap, and you're off to the races. And that is how you waterproof, damp-proof, and frost-proof a shallow rubble foundation in Colorado Springs. After I achieved this detail, I called my friend. His name is Justin Garcia. We had a discussion about this detail. He came and conducted an observation. He wrote a letter on behalf of the repair, and he said, "Hey, building inspector, my name is Justin Garcia. I own A.E. Lucan. My professional engineering stamp is this. I observed this specific detail, and it does meet frost depth and frost protection guidelines, as well as vapor drive protection for a shallow foundation on rubble. Additionally, I reviewed the structural, the dwelling superstructure, and am of the opinion that it is suitable for occupancy." So he checked all the boxes that I needed. I needed the occupancy and suitability letter. I also needed the foundation damp-proofing letter, and I also needed the frost protection letter, and a letter from an engineer saying that the dwelling was existing and that it could be enumerated or addressed. So he checked all those boxes. Now we submitted that back into the queue. We have 9 days to wait because it went in today, and we should have building permits hopefully in 10 days for the construction component. We can call all of our inspections for final roughs and get that reviewed, get all of that approved, and then we're off to the races. Hopefully there will be no more holdups on this job. But there's always something. You just got to figure it out, right? Anyway, I appreciate you watching. To my children, watch this, learn this. Dad spends a lot of time trying to create the legacy documents for you to be amazing builders when you get older. So to my friends, I hope you appreciate this as well. This shit ain't free. I learned a lot of hard and fast lessons, and I'm doing my best now to backtrack and recreate my path to success. So be well, love each other, cheers.